Hello friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Mark, and I thank you so much for coming by today. I will apologize because I have a wicked head cold today, so my voice is a little raspy and my nose is a little stuffy, so I don't want to gross anybody out, with clearing my throat or anything. So I hope you'll be patient with me, and again, I apologize. Getting right into the subject of the video, these are my pen nibs for my pen and ink set. I had a really nice pen and ink set. I had a Zebra G tip with a nice wooden handle that unfortunately about a year or so ago was stolen when I was at a coffee shop. I stepped away and somebody just kind of walked off with it. So keep an eye on your supplies when you go out into the world because people will steal stuff sometimes. So anyhow, this is the pen and ink set that I'm going to be using for the 2017 Inktober challenge. Now, I'm not going to get too much into that because you can just Google that and find out more. But I will say this was my first drawing challenge. I'd never really taken it seriously before, but this one, for some reason, I really wanted to explore it because it just seemed kind of up my alley and really what I was interested in doing. It's 31 days of drawing with pen and ink, and for me, that was really exciting. However, I didn't know enough about the challenge, so I did a little research on it, and I found that there were gaps in the information that was out there. A lot of people have videos and blogs and Instagram posts showing off their work and talking about the fun parts of the challenge, but there wasn't anybody really kind of explaining the pitfalls that you can encounter in doing a drawing challenge, not just Inktober, but any challenge. So I created a video called The 10 Reasons to Avoid Inktober and 10 Reasons Why You Shouldn't Avoid Inktober. And you can see that on my channel. And there's a fun music video portion, there's a speed draw portion, but there's also a lengthier conversation about things you can expect and anticipate when doing any kind of a drawing challenge. So check that out if you haven't seen it already. It's fun, it's informative, and I hope you enjoy it. So hopefully it will be informative for you, and I will remember those pitfalls and what to expect in future challenges. So again, if you want to check that out, it's over on my channel. Now, back to the topic at hand. Is pen and ink dead? I think it's pretty safe to say that no, pen and ink is not dead. However, it seems like it's a dying art because so many people are moving away from traditional media like this and they're moving into the digital realm. It's sort of a natural progression, and I think we can all understand why it's happening because it's cleaner, it's quicker, it's more efficient, and you can kind of send it off anywhere, whether you're posting to social media or like me, if your client says, hey, I need an illustration, you can just work on the fly, and it's not going to create a big mess or any complications in my life. I can do it on site, I can do it in my car, I can do it anywhere. Whereas pen and ink, it's a little bit more of a process. It's like setting up for watercolors. You have to have a whole setup and you have to have a whole breakdown when you do pen and ink drawings. For example, assembling the pens, getting the ink ready, getting a blotter napkin or something beside you. Standard practice. When you're breaking it all down after your drawing, you have to have cleanup stuff. You have to have alcohol or something to clean your nibs. You have to have, napkins and things like that. And it can get messy. So for me, I love to use pen and ink in my studio, but I very, very rarely take it outside the studio with me. In fact, I don't remember the last time I took pen and ink stuff into the field. So, is pen and ink dead? Well, I don't think so. There's a lot of people still doing calligraphy, which I am terrible at, but it's a dying art. And we'll talk about that more after this coffee break. I was one of those kids, and maybe you were too, I don't know, but for me, ballpoint pens were the tool of choice when I was a kid. It didn't matter if it was cheap or nice, I didn't care. I just grabbed any ballpoint pen, usually the kind with the clear body, and I just drew like crazy on anything I could draw on. I remember being taken to the bank and drawing with the, the ballpoint pen that was chained to the table. I used to love drawing on the withdrawal slips and things. And, for me, I could control a ballpoint pen. I knew exactly what to expect from it. And there was red and black and blue and, all kinds of variations in the pen itself. So for me, that was it. However, my dad was a teacher and he introduced me to flare pens. And you had your red and your black and your green. And those were just the best because for me, that was my first experience drawing with actual ink. So whether it was a pen and ink or a marker, whatever you wanted to call it, didn't matter, because I was getting a nice fluid, consistent line from the Flair pen. I got one single line width, and it was a felt tip, so it was very soft to draw with. However, the more you drew with a Flair pen, the squishier the tip got, and it flattened out, and eventually you couldn't draw with it anymore, so it kind of was a bummer. That's when my mom took me to an art store, and I discovered these drawing pens, the pen and ink nibs, and I thought, oh my God, these are so cool. You know, this is what people used to draw with in the old days, and I would love to try that. So I don't know if it was for a birthday or a holiday, but she got me a set, and they were pretty cheap, but they were fabulous, and I really, really took to these right away. I remember going into my little bedroom that I shared with my brother and sat at our common desk, and I set up, and I had my ink and I had my paper. My dad had all this recycled paper from school, and I started drawing. And I was blown away because for the first time I had control of the line width. I could go from a really, really thin line to this thick line just by putting a little pressure on the pen nib. I learned how to pull the pen nib up and kind of bend it a little bit and flick, just so I could get this little spatter effect, which I still use today. And as you can see from this illustration, my style has not changed at all using pen and ink nibs. It's just grown with my style as far as my technical ability, but I still use this the same way I always have. The only caveat that I had with, I should say the only problem I had with the pen and ink stuff is when I was a kid, one night I was drawing and I whacked the bottle of ink onto the floor and it spilled all over the carpet. I expected my mom to be furious, but she was upset, but you know, she didn't get too mad about it. But I had to grow up my whole high school career reminded with that big black ink spot on my carpet. So I learned early on that, you know, drawing with pen and ink is a very messy process. And like I said, there's a setup and there's a breakdown to it. But, you know, what you don't realize is that if you draw with pen and ink and you close the book or you close the sketch pad too quickly, you can ruin the drawing. A lot of times I'd be drawing and I'd drag my hand across the page, not knowing that I just smudged all that ink across my drawing, ruining the drawing. So I'm much more careful nowadays. My spatter technique is intentional, as you can see in this picture. And even with this water brush, I filled it with a gray ink. It's a Liquitex gray ink. And it makes a really nice wash. So I have control. And that's the huge thing about pen and ink is control. But a lot of people don't care about the control so much. They care about the mess it makes and the cleanup and the process and the accessibility to it. And that's why digital is sort of killing the traditional media. Digital has become so easy and accessible that young people are turning to it, older people are turning, everyone's turning to it because it's just a lot easier and more efficient to use. I know for me, I used to, when I got to college, I got these rapidograph pens, and these were the kind you could fill with ink, and you know they had a wire tip that ran through the tip of the pen, and you had extreme control over the fine lines that you drew. Well, this multiliner Copic marker that I'm using here, that does the same thing in a disposable form. They have refillable ones, but whether you're using micron pens, whether you're using Statler or Copic or the Faber-Castell, any of them, these are rapidograph pens or technical pens that you have precise control over. You don't really vary the line width except with a different pen. So you can get a 0.1 or a 0.2 or a 0.003 or something like that. I like to fill these water brushes with ink and use that because I get a heavy flow. I can cover large areas and it just is more fun for me. And so I'm going to go back through and do this one more time just so you can see it. With the water brush, this is the gray ink again, and you can see that it's just easy and quick and efficient. And again, it is a little messy, so you have to be careful. But I just absolutely love that I can get this shadowing area in so quickly and so efficiently. And, you know, with digital, I could do the same thing digitally on a layer, and I can have full control over the layer. But it's not committing to a book. I can't pick it up later and tangibly look at this illustration and say, yes, I did this. I created this with pen and ink. It's done with my hand. There's no digital editing. There's no undo button. There's no filters or anything like that, or special brushes. This is this is the old school way of drawing, and that for me is what I love. So for me, pen and ink is not dead. It is very much alive and, well, sorry, well, pun intended. But, again, going back to the digital side, when I'm with a client or I'm on site and they say, hey, we need a spot illustration, I don't have my pen and ink stuff with me because I don't drag that stuff around. So I have my iPad and my Apple Pencil with me, and I can draw a spot illustration on the fly. And it looks just like a pen and ink drawing. And that's the crazy thing with some of the brushes that you have with Photoshop and Wacom tablets, and I use Procreate and I use ArtRage. There's so many different things to use. Now again, I'm going to go back and show you this Copic Multiliner here. I love these pens, and they have such great control because the line weight is consistent and you never really have to think too much about it. However, with a pen nib, you're not going to get this kind of control. You can, but it takes a lot longer. You have to be very precise with how you're drawing. And these multiliners and these disposables are inexpensive. Some of them are expensive, but they're pretty accessible. They last quite a long time, and they're great for drawing. With the water brush filled with ink, it's unpredictable because it's a flow of ink and you don't really know if it's going to bleed through. You don't know if it's going to, just act in a way that you're not expecting it to. It's a very, very heavy flow of ink, and I like that for certain things. The happy medium between a brush pen and sort of these rapidograph technical pens is the pen and ink dip pens, because there you have your control, but it is also a little unpredictable. So for me, pen and ink is not dead. It is a thriving art form, but it is on the way out compared to digital stuff. So if you like calligraphy and you like pen and ink drawing, definitely check out some pen and ink supplies. They're not that expensive, and they're a lot of fun, and I really encourage people to try new stuff all the time. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe below and I'll bring you more content. And if you like the music, go over to noisetrade.com, and with an email address, you can exchange that for some free music that I've created, like the song you heard here. Thank you again so much for watching. Have a great day, and God bless.